Hello everyone, and right now in this video what I'm going to be doing is just showing you how you can create a quick remake within FL Studio. And in order to do that, we're going to use MIDI files. And this is just a quick way to create a remake of any song you like. And a MIDI file contains MIDI data. So let me give you an example here where I'm going to choose a MIDI file. Now for me, I have to be really concerned about copyright issues. So I'm going to be using a classical piece of music. The reason why I'm going to use a classical piece of music is because I don't have to worry about copyright issues with that. Classical music is in the public domain. If you're worried about uploading and copyright infringement, I know you see a lot of people doing that on YouTube. They're not supposed to. And a lot of times those videos do get removed. And I have seen people get their accounts canceled because of that issue. So be aware of that and know. Again, don't want to be a bummer, but just it's a fair warning. If you want to be on the safe side, you can use public domain music. Typically, the rule of thumb is anything before the year 1922. If it was created before 1922, it's going to be in the public domain. So I'm going to use a classical piece of music created by Debussy. This is a MIDI folder in my library. You have to import these folders. So if I go to the location of where my MIDI files are, or my hard drive, I'll show you how you can download a lot of MIDI files, search for them in a moment. But this is a folder that contains MIDI files, and if I want to get that folder in FL Studio, click it, drag it onto my library. So I have all these folders here. I have tons and tons of MIDI files. MIDI files are very useful, not just for creating a remake though, but in this example, we're just going to take a look at how you can use them to create a note-for-note remake. And you can do this within a day, and this is really fast, quick production. We're cheating a little bit, but we're taking advantage of the technology within FL Studio and modern digital audio workstations to really speed up production time. You can create 2 songs a day, which is incredibly fast. Typically, a song production, if you work every day at it, can take about 2 weeks to 4 weeks for professional quality results, and even longer than that in many cases. Okay, especially if you play live acoustic instruments, the process is more difficult. If you're working in a band, even longer. But we can do it in a matter of hours. All right, we can get a professional quality sounding remake in a matter of hours without having a whole lot of skill involved either. Anybody can do this. Beginner, intermediate, advanced, anybody could. Intermediate and advanced users, you can take advantage of this to do a lot more things. You can turn these MIDI imports into your own creations by manipulating the MIDI data, slicing it up, and doing those sort of things, okay? So, to get the MIDI file in here, just drag, let go. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this option turned on. All right, this is asking me if I want to add the Fruity LSD to my project. I'm going to do that just to show you what this is. I'm going to hit accept here. And for me, since I'm recording here, I got issues with my recording. I'm going to turn my volume down about halfway. You don't have to do that. This is just on my end. I have to do this. But here I have a MIDI file loaded up in here. It's going to sound bad, all right, because it's coming out of my Microsoft synthesizer. It has nothing to do with FL Studio. MIDI files don't produce music of their own. MIDI files only contain data. That data has to be sent out somewhere. All right, and this option is here for you if you want to load up a MIDI file and just play it back. This is more of a preview, not so much something you would do for production. So to preview any MIDI files, you can use that LSD option to load up a MIDI file and listen to it. And just know that it's not going to sound good. It's going to sound bad because you're going to be using your built-in Microsoft synthesizer. I'm going to show you how you can import a MIDI file, replace the MIDI file with your own instruments to get professional sounding results, okay? What I'm going to do here is first pick a MIDI file by loading up like this, just so I can choose a MIDI file that I like. All right, and that's going to be too complex for this example, so I'm not going to use that. All right, and I'm going to use this. So I got this MIDI file in here, and now, all right, and notice I can preview that, play it back. Once you choose a MIDI file that you think you'd want to remaster to produce a remake, re-import the MIDI file after you preview it, uncheck the LSD option, and leave these settings here. Start new project, create 1 channel per track, use all tracks here, hit accept. Now I can replace the instruments here with my own instrumentation. You can be as creative as you want to. You can play it safe, choose the same instrumentation that you find in the MIDI file, and that's what I'm going to do in my case. All right, I'm going to use a piano here, and I'm going to choose a couple string instruments here. But if you wanted to, I mean, you could do anything you like. You could put some modern synths here, all right, to give your classical remake a more modern sound, all right, to make it more your own. Before we actually go and do that, I have to explain a couple things here about events. I'm not going to explain events in detail. I have a tutorial called Events in Automation that will explain events to you in detail. If you need information about events and how to work with events, do watch that tutorial. But there's a technical thing that we have to be aware of here. If I wanted to, let's say, change the tempo of this, and let's say I wanted to put the tempo up to 139. So notice I changed my tempo to 139, press play. It just goes right to a different number. Go here, set it 140. It's back to a different number. Reason, edit events. When you import a MIDI file, that tempo information is imported. This is a very dynamic tempo here. So I can't edit that tempo until I go in here and choose edit, delete all. Okay, then I can just, after I delete all the events, I can change the tempo here with no problem. That's something you need to be aware of. Same thing goes here with volume. It bounces right back up if I try to change this. I'm going to give you a tip about volume, though you don't necessarily have to change this. You have a couple options here to change the volume here, but just know that panning is the same way. Here I'm going to try to pan this way. It resets down to here. Again, to fix that, edit events. If I wanted to edit the panning, I would do delete all, and then I could pan it any way I want. Okay, so let's talk about how you would go about replacing these instruments. One thing I can do is simply right click and choose replace and choose any third-party synth, any synthesizer I like. In this case, I am going to use the sound font player. All right, and I'm going to use some sound fonts. I deleted this string ensemble sound font, so bear with me here on that. I'm going to show you another way you can load up a sound font too. So I have the Fruity sound font player loaded up, and then down here, I'm going to load up a sound font. I'm going to use my own samples, and we're going to work on trying to get this to sound good. And I have a grand piano sound font here that I'm going to use. I'm just going to drag that onto the sound font player, and I'm just going to drag that here. So I have two sound fonts. Just adjust this down here so I don't clip on my recording. All right, so that's a nice sounding sound font. Right here, I'm going to use the Citrus for this. I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to choose Orchestral 1 for that. And then for the violoncello, I'm going to use another sound font sample, orchestral. I might even use a bassoon for this one instead of a cello. No, I don't think bassoon is going to work. All right, we'll use legato strings. Alright, so I have a sequence in there now. I chose my instruments, and when it comes to choosing instrument settings, I really went the conservative route, choosing pretty much the default instrumentation. You can experiment with different kinds of instrumentation. It's not as easy as it sounds, though. It's very difficult. to actually pick the right instruments that are going to produce a good quality sound. It's going to take you a lot longer if you go that route. If you're new to this, stick to maybe your first couple remakes. Maybe try to stick to the original instrumentation. I mean, don't take my word for it. Give it a try. I mean, if you want to replace these instruments with your own more exotic instruments, okay, different synths, maybe just ignoring completely the original arrangement and how the instrumentation was set up, go ahead. But just a fair warning, it's going to be difficult for you. And if you don't believe me, give it a try. It's pretty difficult. And when you have 4 tracks, not too bad. When you have 16, okay, it's really, really hard. But now that I have this set up, I'm going to just take a moment to, I'm going to go into my master track here. And I'm going to add an HTML notebook. I'm going to show you where you can get some of these things, just maybe to make things a little easier for you. And we're going to go to Google first. Google, if you need MIDI files, you can type in MIDI files. You can download MIDI files from Google. There's a nice search engine. Here's a MIDI search engine. It's musicrobot.com. And if you type in MIDI files in the Google search engine, click here, you can get a nice MIDI search engine that you can download MIDI files from. Use the song option here. All right, even if you want a band name, use the song option. I'll just show you. If I type in U2 to find all MIDI files from U2, click here. I'll get a lot of hits. Here's all the songs by U2. But if I use the band option and type in U2, U2, notice I only get 1 hit. Okay, don't know why that is, but it is. So just keep it on that song option if you decide to use that MIDI search engine here. You'll find a lot of MIDI files there, like that. Download them, get them into FL Studio, load them back in FL Studio, and now that's how you can get a bunch of MIDI files. And then as far as sound fonts are concerned, you can go to my website here. I have not had any time to do anything with this website for a while, but I do have sound fonts that you can download and use for your projects. So that'd be www.download-tutorials.com. Type it in just like that. And right here you can, if you click on sound fonts, register, you can download a whole big huge collection of sound fonts, few gigabytes. All right, and then you can have many of these sound fonts that I have here using as an example here for this. You can download that, get it into your FL Studio library, and load it up into the sound font player. And it's nice working with sound fonts because you can be very specific about the kind of instruments you pick and choose to load up. And some of the sound fonts are good quality, some are not so good quality. It doesn't really matter because we're going to use the mixer to get everything to sound as professional as possible. All right, and of course you have the option to use third-party plugins. Any samples that you have, you can use also. So now we have everything, MIDI file, instruments loaded up. We have to work on getting this to sound better, more professional. First thing I'm going to do is select all here. I'm going to assign all these to their own mixer track all at once by selecting everything. Double click here to select all tracks. Drop down this menu. And I'm going to choose link selected channels. Well, first I'm going to choose a starting track here. Starting from track 1, I'm going to add each track to the mixer. So link selected channels starting from this track. And now all channels have their own mixer track here. And I'm going to just add a little bit subtle reverb to maybe this track here for the piano. I'm going to mute these tracks to work on the piano part first. Now, in adjusting the volumes here, remember I had this issue here where when I said you turn this down, pops right back up. I don't really worry about this too much, and I do like to leave this because this has a lot of dynamic properties sometimes. All right, but this volume is too high. What I like to do here is in the channel settings, I like to adjust the level here. This just multiplies the volume. It won't affect the dynamic properties, but it will multiply the volume, and I think it's just a better option to adjust the volume for that. And I'm going to turn that down, both tracks, about that much. Alright, now normally I would go and really allow my peaks to go up a lot higher. I have an issue with screen recording where my volume is just multiplied for some reason whenever I do screen recording, so I got my master volume turned down. So I'm going to try to do my best here to get this to sound as good as possible. But just to give you an idea about how you would go about doing this yourself, I just added a little reverb to this. Normally what I would do is go in and add a parametric equalizer. Keep this subtle. Alright, if you like to use Sentrax, you can use Sentrax. I'm not a big fan of Sentrax, so you're going to see me using duplicate plugins on different channels. Use a multi-band compressor here on that one. Parametric equalizer here for that. Alright, so I have that there. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn these on. These have their own mixer tracks. Pretty much going to do the same thing here. Now, the rule of thumb is the more time you spend paying attention to detail, the better quality you're going to get. I don't really have the luxury to do that, so this isn't going to sound as good as I'd like. But what I'm going to do here is just add a reverb. I'm going to use 4 strings for both of these. All right, you kind of get a feel for the kind of effects you want after a while, after you do this a while. And then I'm just going to add some presets to my master track. Here, in my library browser, I'm going to collapse my structure, and I'm just going to add some mastering presets here. Mixer presets. I'm going to choose General Purpose Mastering 4. And I'm going to add a mastering plugin here. Now, it's a good idea to get a couple good mastering plugins. All right, you have to figure out what works for you. I like the PSP Vintage Warmer. I also like the Isotope Ozone mastering plugin. I'm going to use the PSP Vintage Warmer. This is a third-party plugin. You're not going to have this, but if you don't, you can just use the FL Studio mastering preset. But I really do like the PSP Vintage Warmer here. And I'm just going to choose Mix Finalize 2 there. Right, and I'm going to go in here to my master volume once again. Turn this down a little bit, just so I don't get peaking on my recording, and then right, so there you have it. Okay, that's it. It's pretty easy to do. Okay, it's nothing that's too difficult to do. And so you can do this on your own. It's real easy to create a remake, and you can do a lot better of a job than I could. I mean, I just kind of did this on the fly. But if you take your time, you can do this within a day. Okay, and you can get professional quality results. And if you do, post it as a video reply. I'd like to see or hear your remakes. So you can just upload them, and I'm sure a lot of other people who are viewing this video would like to see what other people are doing and how their remakes turned out. Now for me, I was really conservative here, but again, you can go ahead and be a little more creative. You can choose unique instruments here, and you can do a lot of different things. But with that, I am just going to end this video.